Ciao amici, I'm Master Leo Spizzirri, and today I'm going to be making an awesome pan pizza dough that you can use for multiple styles of pizza in a pan. We can make Detroit style, grandma, Sicilian, anything in a pan, including a focaccia. And really, it's just about understanding the thickness of the dough and how much it needs to proof in a pan to create that other style. So come along with me. I'm going to teach you all of my tricks to making the perfect pan pizza. "35 years, this never gets old." Let's start by going through the recipe. Very simple. This recipe that I'm gonna give you, if you're gonna make, let's call it a Detroit style pizza in a standard 8 by 10 pan, 8 inches by 10 inches, this will make you 2 dough balls, or maybe like one nice half sheet, depending if you wanted a thinner or maybe a thicker like a Sicilian. In this recipe, I've got 280 grams of bread flour, 70 grams of semola di macinata, which is that fine semolina flour. I'm going to use 245 grams of water. That's about half of one of these bottles. Then inside of here, I've got 7 grams of sea salt, 6 grams of honey. I'm not a big fan of using sugar in my dough. I just feel like honey mixes better into the water and just gives me a better result. And I like the flavor a little bit better. Then extra virgin olive oil, 7 grams. And this is where we're going to get into yeast. We're going to use 3.5 grams. What's 3.5 grams? I'm talking like the tip of your pinky nail, right? In one of these packets, when you go to the grocery store and you find these strips like this, each one of these packets is 7 grams. So we're going to use about half a packet of one of these packets of yeast. Pretty simple. Let's get this scale in front of me. I'm going to get a bowl here ready so that we can start mixing our ingredients. And now the first thing I'm going to weigh out is my flour. The first one I'm going to do is that semolina flour. When I measure anything, I'm putting this bowl on top of the scale. But you have to remember that on this scale, there's a button called tare, T-A-R-E. That's going to take whatever the weight of this container is and bring it to 0. We don't want to weigh the bowl, we only want to weigh the ingredient. I'm going to start weighing out this semolina flour. This measurement here, 70 grams, barely anything at all, but really it's just in there so that I get that absorption, we call that. I want to make this dough feel like it's got water, but I don't want it sticking all over my hands. Now, from here, this is bread flour. Bread flour is a pretty heavy flour. This is almost 13% protein. This is going to raise up really light and airy, and it's not going to collapse on itself, creating that chewy interior. Now that I have my flour all scaled out, now it's totally fine. Take this flour, stick it inside the other flour, and we know that our measurements are accurate. From here, I'm going to put this to the side, and I'm going to start weighing out the rest of my ingredient. I'm going to start with my yeast, 3.5 grams of yeast. And 3.5 grams, like I said, is one of those that it's not very much yeast at all. Make sure once you open your yeast up that you take this and stick it back in the refrigerator. We're going to do 7 grams of olive oil. My next ingredient is honey. And I do this trick a lot when I work with honey specifically or anything sticky. Think molasses or anything that's going to stick to the bowl. I take a little bit of oil, just a little bit, a touch. And once that oil is in here, I just give it this kind of little smear all the way around. And this is going to keep whatever goes inside this bowl, think honey, it's going to keep it underneath with this layer that'll slide out. Don't forget to hit tare, and we're going to use 6 grams of honey here. The honey is going to do 2 things. It's going to give it a sweetness, but it's really more about baking this in your oven and getting that crust to be that beautiful golden brown color. Here is going to be my sea salt. I'm going to hit that 0. I'm going to come in with 7 grams of salt. My last ingredient is my water. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do 245 grams of water here. Now that my ingredients are all scaled up, I'm ready to go. Now that I've got everything in front of me, I'm going to start by putting all my flour into the bowl. In here, what I want you to do is, I don't know, my grandma, my mother would make pasta at home when I was a kid all the time, and they would use their hands, right? And if you ever made pasta at home, we always start with the flour and we say, make a well in the center of the bowl, right? Or if you were making pasta, you might be working on a cutting board like this. What do we fill the well with? We fill it with water. So I'm going to put all of my water into the center of this bowl. From here, what I want to do, since I'm using active dry yeast, I can hear the YouTube and Instagram comments already. I have to bloom the yeast and I need 110-degree water. Listen, trust Uncle Leo. Take the active dry yeast just like this. Ethan, come here. I want you to sprinkle the yeast right on top of the water. And you see how it floats? What's going to happen is, as this is floating inside over here, the water is going to absorb inside the outer layer, which is called the membrane. Now, this is my favorite part. How many of you old wrestling fans out there, right? I came from a day when it was still the WWF, not the wildlife people, right? Take your hand and create the iron claw, right? Who was the wrestler, CJ? George the Animal Steel? Who was it? Make the iron claw, right? Turn it sideways and you've got an amazing whisk. Take your fingers, yes, your fingers, stick them inside the bowl, and I want you to slowly start stirring the water where the yeast is at. As I'm kind of turning this just like this, all of a sudden, I've created a barrier. A barrier of what? Flour and water touch each other and they create gluten. Gluten is going to be the barrier that's going to protect our yeast from our salt, which is the next ingredient that I want to use. So I'm going to put all of my salt into this bowl and I'm going to give this a stir. The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my honey. Okay, as I'm putting the honey inside over here, you'll see how easy it is. That honey kind of just comes right off the sides of that bowl. I'm going to continue stirring. This is going to go fast. You can see I still got the claw. Now, Ethan, come here. Look what's happening. I've got this little batter. And as I'm stirring with just my fingers, the batter is hitting the sides where that flour is, and it's pulling the flour into the dough as it needs it. Super simple, right? Even Andy could do this. I watched Andy eat his first mussel yesterday. Are you kidding me? Okay. As I'm going to continue to do this, you'll notice that this is now getting stuck to my fingers more. These little things that are hanging off, these strings, this is actually the gluten strands now being developed. Once you get to this point, there's a few tools that you're going to need. And as long as you're going on Amazon and buying yourself a digital scale, literally go and buy yourself a 10-cent tool called a bowl scraper. Bowl scraper has a round edge. A bench scraper has a flat edge. This one is a bowl scraper. It's made to go down around the bowl. You could also use it as a hand scraper, a finger scraper, use it wherever you want, right? Just use it for your dough, nothing else, okay? Now, as we come around here, I'm cleaning up my fingers a little bit. I'm not too worried about this because I still have a lot of mixing to do. But what I am worried about is all this extra flour on the side of the bowl. I want that to all come here and be in the party. I don't want to miss any of this because we weighed all of our ingredients out, meaning everything that we weighed out, I want inside of our dough. This is to the point, even though it looks like it's a little chunky, a little shaggy, don't worry about it because we haven't started kneading yet. This is just mixing by hand. At this point, I'm going to take the dough, just like this, stuck to my fingers. Don't worry about this stuff that's stuck to your fingers yet. I'm going to take my olive oil. I'm going to pour this on top of my dough. I'm going to make sure I get everything out. And now I'm going to start that process of squeezing and getting this oil incorporated. This is where you're physically going to see this dough change in front of you. What's happening here is as I'm doing this, those gluten strands, remember those threads I held up? They're being coated by the oil. It's acting as like a lubricant, right? Take the bowl scraper, come all the way around. Make sure we have all the dough, all that oil is in here. At this point, This is the time when I'm ready to actually start the physical kneading of this dough. I'm going to take this like this, and I'm going to come off the table. This is one of those moments that I think is incredible because I have everybody starting to freak out here, especially working on a wood board, which people are like, chef, this is suicide. You know, this is like a kamikaze mission. You're gonna die, right? What are we doing? I'm talking about this sticking to this board, right? Don't worry about it. I'm gonna show you the proper technique for kneading dough. If you're a subscriber of our channel, you'll be able to go into that little dough library thing that I got, and you'll be able to see all the doughs. And I refer to this kneading method a lot, right? So as you come through, I'm gonna take the dough and I'm gonna use my palms of my hands, right? This part here on the bottom, specifically the heel. As I'm kneading, the idea is that we're gonna go forward and roll back, forward and roll back. As this flour continues to absorb inside over here, you're gonna see that this is gonna start to get stronger and stronger, right? That water now is getting into this dough. And I've created this nice, beautiful dough. It's got strength, it's elastic, right? There's no more flour evident. And I don't wanna work this any more than this at this point. You remember that bowl we just used that had that little bit of oil still inside over here? Let's use that. Take just a little shot, literally a drop of oil. Put it down on the bottom here. Give it a stir, and then just lay this dough inside, and we need to cover it. I use these plastic sheets like this. They're reusable, and I use a lot of these. You can see how big this is. I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna cover it all nice underneath, and I'm gonna give this a little bit of time to rest. Maybe 15 minutes is all you need. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you enough time to wash your hands, let this rest, go grab yourself a cocktail, maybe a cup of tea, I don't know, whatever you're into. Come back and let's finish this dough together. Resting is pretty critical to our process of making dough. And I always say, when in doubt, let it rest. I'm gonna use my bench scraper or my bowl scraper here. I'm gonna give this a turn just to loosen this from the bottom. But I want to watch. Look, in just that little bit of time, this has come together, and it's got strength, it's got elasticity. At this point, what I'm going to do with my hands, I'm literally going to take this, put it on the table, and I'm going to fold this a few times. Look at this. Ethan, come here. Look how smooth this is. It's not sticking anymore. It's not stuck to my hands. It's not even stuck to the board. You could easily say, I'm gonna chop this in half, make 2 even dough balls and put it away, or physically grab your scale, turn it on, and let's actually cut some dough. Let's see how close I was. I've got 2 portions here. This one's 261, 338. A little cross-eyed over here. Something happened, I don't know. And now let's go ahead and get myself another 40 grams of dough here. That was a little big. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. Here's a dough ball that I didn't touch. Take the outsides of this dough and make 4 points. Make this into a square, right? And then take the 2 pieces on the outside, opposite corners, fold those in. Take the other 2 sides, fold those in. Now that I've got all of my points folded into the middle, I've got an opening right here and an opening facing me. The idea is that I want this part that's facing me to touch this part that's facing you. And I want to close this on top of itself and pull back, okay? Same thing, I'm going to take this is the top, I'm going to turn this, take the outside edge, fold it, pull it back. I'm just rocking this back and forth very gently. I'm really not touching the top of the dough. I'm pushing from the bottom. This is giving this dough ball a little strength. My fingers or my thumbs are together, and I'm literally pushing forward on the table, allowing this to roll with me. Same thing when I come backwards, I'm using my pinkies and part of the backs of my hands, and I'm pulling towards me. Forward, back, forward, back. The last thing I want to do, where these 2 little openings are on the sides, close those up. Why? Because now we've created this nice tight skin on the outside of this, and that's going to hold all of those air bubbles inside. From here now, I've got 2 beautiful dough balls. I'm gonna get a box. This is why I say the Blackstone boxes work amazing for all the doughs, because one of the things that they did was they created this little, I don't know, what do you call this? Nate, what do you call this thing?
Tray.
Boom! So take your tray, get yourself a little bit of olive oil, right? I'm not talking a lot. I'm talking a little drop. One here, one here. Why one there, one there? Because I got 2 dough balls. Take your finger, give this a smear on the inside over here, right? Now I want you to kind of think about what I'm telling you here, all right? We're making a rectangle pizza. We're making a square pizza. It's going into a pan. Think of the shape of the holes inside of this tray. I made dough earlier. And I made a lot of dough earlier just to prove that this works and I can do that much dough by hand. I mixed a full bag of flour. If you needed this dough today, leave it in this tray inside the box with the lid on top of it and let it proof for about 3 or 4 hours, depending on how hot your temperature is. I'm over here, it's about 150 degrees outside, 99% humidity like I'm in a rainforest. And guess what? My dough balls have risen super high, and you could see that they're filling the inside of these cavities. Take this dough, stick it inside here, let it rest 3-4 hours ambient temperature, and you're ready to make a pizza with it. If not, stick this dough inside here, put it inside with the lid, put it inside your refrigerator, and let it chill out overnight. And the next day, you'll be at the same point I am to make yourself a gorgeous pizza. The key to a perfect pan pizza is in the proofing. You watched me stretch this dough on the table. I gently dimpled the dough with my fingers, allowing all of those bubbles to be locked inside the structure of this dough. If you do this process like I did, the end result is a super light and airy dough full of air. This is literally light as a cloud. This is just one dough that I made on this channel. If you haven't seen all the other dough recipes that I shared, go back. Make sure to like and subscribe so as soon as I put another one out, you'll get it before everybody else. Guys, try these doughs. They're all amazing. Just watch my process, my simple techniques, and you're gonna be a pizzaiolo superstar in your own home. I'm Chef Leo. Ciao, amici.